Welcome back to another Shonen Express podcast. This is a podcast where I go over everything that happened in Weekly Shonen Jump this week. For those of you who don't know, I have a certain way of doing these podcasts and going through them. And one of the things that I want to make sure I do for all of you who listen is I don't want to spoil anything for you. If you're catching up on a certain series, I don't want to spoil that series for you. So if you'll take a look down in the description, you'll see I've left the timestamps for when I talk about every series that runs in the magazine. And so if you only want to listen to certain series because those are the series that you read and you want to hear what I thought about them this week, just go to those timestamps and listen then, and you'll be good, and you'll be spoiler-free for the rest of it. Also, my top 3 at the end of every video, I tell you what my top 3 manga were in the magazine this week. And when I do that, I try to keep those as spoiler-free as possible. I, vaguely say why that's my top 3, but if you listen to the part where I talked about that chapter, you'll know. So those are also spoiler free. If you were ever curious about what is this top 3, but I don't want to get spoiled, you can go to the end there, and I put that timestamp down there as well, so you guys will know when you can tune in and tune out, so you never have to worry about anything being spoiled. But I gotta say, guys, this week, issue 48 was awesome. A lot of the chapters I thought were really, really good this week, and so I can't wait to get into it. But first, as always, we're going to go over the cover, and this week, the cover went to Jujutsu Kaisen. The double-page color spread was fine. I mean, we saw the characters, we saw Yuji, Okotsu, Hikari, and Maki on the cover there, and they look good. This might be a dumb question, and those of you who are better at keeping up with Jujutsu Kaisen than I am might immediately know what this is, but what is on Yuji's arm in that color spread? Why does his arm look like that? I just totally forget what's going on with Yuji's arm there. So if you know, leave it down in the comments section. I'd love to remember why that's happening. But this chapter focuses about a quarter on a conversation that Angel is having with the other Jujutsus, with, Hikari's there, Okotsu, Mei is there. So it's a conversation that they're having together about what to do after the Satoru Gojo versus Sukuna fight. How are they going to handle this? Because if it turns out that Sukuna essentially does what they're doing to him, which is, kind of whittle them down, and then Kenjaku shows up, they're going to be screwed, because they still have to fight Kenjaku, and they know this, and they're trying to make a plan for this. And Angel, in fact, says that she nominates Fumihiko Takaba, which we saw last chapter. He has already confronted Kenjaku, right? So, and we see why Angel has nominated him to fight. His curse technique, this kind of Looney Tunes technique that he has, is pretty effective on everything, but actually makes him an incredibly strong sorcerer. Now, we see throughout this chapter the fight that these two have. And I say fight, but it's really more of like a back and forth of talking. And what's interesting to me about this is it shows, right, we know how strong Takada's curse technique can be. This essentially, he would never get injured or never take any damage at all, and we know that about him. So he would never get he could never get injured. He's incredibly powerful, right? As long as he thinks he's funny. And Kenjaku picks up on that immediately, and so starts to best him in comedy, and that means that by the end of the chapter, Takada's resolve in himself is thoroughly shaken. I think this is really interesting. His power has gone mostly away because of how shaken up he is, that maybe he's not that good of a comedian. I really like this. I wish this was more than like a 1.5 chapter fight, but at the same time, I think it displays Kenjaku's versatility and intelligence, as well as displaying a major drawback to Takada that we hadn't really seen or thought about before. So, yeah, I thought this was really good. I think next chapter we're going to continue in this fight. I don't think this is the end of Takada. I think he's going to come back and rally himself here. I think that last little quote, "Why did I ever become an entertainer?" is going to be really important going forward. So I don't think this is the last we're going to see of this fight. I think we're going to see more of it, which is a little unfortunate because I really want to get back to Sukuna, who is currently, I think, going head-to-head with Yuji and Higuruma. So I really want to get back to that, but at the same time, I think this is an interesting fight too. Jujutsu Kaisen is definitely popping off recently, so I'm all into it. But those are my thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen this week. So as you guys know, I go from the cover page then to the color pages as they appear on the Viz website. That's how I go through them. And we had 3 color pages this week, the first of which went to Chapter 27 of Kill Blue. You guys know I'm a fan of Kill Blue. I think it's a really good series, and it can be funny, and the action's very interesting, right? You guys know that. This chapter, I just didn't have a lot to say about, honestly. The whole thing about the Binky guy stalking Noren kind of fizzled out into nothing early in this chapter, like in the first couple pages, and so that didn't really do anything. That setup from last week didn't really do anything. And we spent most of our time with this senior who is like a little girl, looks like a little girl, struggling with that issue. And I think there's some comedy bits in this chapter that are kind of funny, but overall, I didn't have a whole lot to say about this chapter. I thought going to that tavern was interesting. It's interesting that Okami would take this girl back there, but overall, I don't really have a lot to say about this chapter. It was funny in some places, and it reinforces this idea of, look to the things you have, not the things you don't have, which I think is a good thought, but really, that's all I had to say about Kill Blue this week. And that will bring us to our next color page, which this week went to Chapter 8 of Mama Yuyu. You guys know, I thought last week's chapter was incredible. I thought the chapter before that was incredible. I love this stuff with Escaba. The color page itself, okay, it's fine. Corleo is fighting Escaba. It makes sense. But this chapter was really cool. We get introduced to another demon lord from another realm called Minerva, and I think her power is very, very cool. I love her power, the star thing that like forcibly diverts people's attention. That's such a cool ability. I was blown away by that ability this week. I thought it was very, very good. Unfortunately, I don't think I was correct. Last week I said I thought that Escaba was working with Pinello, that this was all going to be an act, and that they were going to end up as that 3-man cell anyway, but this was going to cause some kind of rivalry between him and Corleo. I was not correct about that. I think Escaba's just a bad guy, unfortunately, and there's not a second twist on top of the first twist. But a little bit of one is Pinello was there and could have stopped this, but didn't, because he's trying to get information out of Escaba. The biggest thing, first of all, the fight between Minerva and Escaba was awesome. The biggest thing I think that happened this week, though, is we got that guy in a trench coat and a hat. He came back onto the scene, and this time he spoke. One of the creepiest chapters was where he first showed up between Alicia and Corleo, right, a couple chapters ago. But he's back, and he's still creepy. And for some reason, he sent Escaba here to cause problems. And so I think he sent Escaba here to find someone who was worthy, who was strong enough for something. We don't know yet. Now, I think the confrontation between him and Pinello could be very interesting. I look forward to seeing what that is. But this is another really good Mama Yuyu chapter, and I think if things continue like this, we could be seeing, a real success here that I wouldn't have guessed at first. I really like the direction that Mama Yuyu is heading, and I hope it continues to go in that direction. But that's really all I had to say about it this week. And then that will bring us to Me and Roboco, Chapter 159. That was the final color page that was in the magazine this week. It went to Me and Roboco. And good, because I love Me and Roboco, right? You guys know I'm a fan of Me and Roboco. If you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you know I've been a fan of this for a long time, for as long as it's been running, really. The color page itself was cool. I like that all the various Robocos were on the color page. That was neat. The chapter itself was pretty funny. I like that Roboco keeps insisting that she is in the front because this is like her series. I think it's hilarious that the Oda is the author of Battle Roboco's manga. I always think it's funny when the author of Me and Roboco uses like these real life things about Weekly Shonen Jump in his manga, and they do that all the time, right? So I like that. I thought that was really funny and led to some funny things. The stuff with Showa era Roboco was kind of funny. But, overall, I think the twist at the end that the alien villain is like a scarred up Roboco is interesting. We'll see where this goes. I'm amazed that this like little arc has lasted for as long as it is. I think this is the third chapter in a row that deals with these like multi-dimensional Robocos, right? And so we're still going to, and I think next chapter, we're still going to continue in this vein. I think I said last week that I wouldn't be surprised if this week they just do something totally different and then are like, oh yeah, we resolved that whole conflict like off screen and we got the Robocos back. But I'm kind of glad that they didn't because we get to see more and more of these Robocos. So it's really cool. I'm a fan of this manga. It's a gag manga, and it did its job again. It made me laugh. It was funny. So yeah, I liked Me and Roboco this week. Next up, we have My Hero Academia, chapter 405. This was a good MHA chapter. Now, you guys know if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I'm not feeling MHA that much right now. Recently, it hasn't been something that has really brought me in and really given me like the same feeling I had with the series at first. But this chapter was awesome. And I might just be saying this because I'm a big Bakugo fan, but this chapter was all about Bakugo. First of all, we kind of learned, kind of didn't. We learned that Night Eye's predictions can be thwarted, and we saw that with their little interaction, right? Although it seems clear that Night Eye is a figment of All Might's imagination, so, something left up in the air there. But it's definitely, All Might is not going to die. Now, you might remember me saying last week that I thought it was almost a shame that All Might keeps living through these things. But right now, I'm reading through My Hero Academia, the manga, from start to its present day in my own collection. And, I just came across a couple things after the first fight with All For One where All Might is, has this resolve to continue to live, to support Midoriya. And there's something about that I think has actually been consistent, or more consistent than I gave it credit for last time. So I kind of wanted to correct myself here, because as I was reading it, I found that. But this chapter specifically, Bakugo was awesome. I mean, it was incredible. I love that he is such a valuable member of this hero society and a valuable hero. I just love it. I think it's an amazing turn of events. I think that how we got here is great. And yeah, that's what I think about him. It was a really great chapter. It showcased this, love of All Might that this society has, and how this transfers into how Bakugo fights and how he continues to move forward. And Bakugo's own willpower and strength and training with his own quirk, how this ends up helping him massively in the long run. So yeah, I thought this was a great My Hero Academia chapter this week, and that's really what I got to say about it. And this will bring us to One Piece chapter 1096. Another incredible chapter this week. I mean, One Piece is always incredible. You guys know, if you listen to this podcast, I'm a huge One Piece fan, right? One Piece is no, simple task, and it is one of the series that I collect, and I have all of it. And so I'm super invested in One Piece. I love One Piece a ton, and this chapter was a great One Piece chapter. It was awesome. First of all, I had to do some math on the ages of these characters. So we know that this incident, this God Valley incident, is happening 38 years ago from our present day. And so that means that I looked up, Garp is 78 years old in our present day. And so 38 years ago, he would have been 40 years old. And so because originally I was like, wow, Garp looks kind of old for like this, for the God Valley incident, but that's not actually true. He does look like a 40-year-old man. That checks out. That's fine. It's I love that once he learns that Roger is involved, is going to be at God Valley, that's what motivates him to go. And it seems like he is hyper focused on the Roger pirates and on finding Roger and taking him out. First of all, let's just talk about these pirate crews. So we see the younger Roger pirates, Roger with the straw hat on him. This obviously before Shanks is a part of the crew, because Shanks doesn't have the straw hat. Roger still has it and is actively wearing it and going into battle with it. Garp looks awesome. I love that he's there and rearing to go. And we see the Rocks pirates. Now, extremely upsettingly to me, we do not see Rox Diesebek. We don't get to see him, even though this is the guy we all want to see, right? But of course, we don't get that. We don't get that opportunity. We do not get to see Rox, but we see the Rocks pirates. A couple things to note about that one, like, 2-page spread of various panels where we see them is, one, Whitebeard has this kind of like I'm in charge mentality thing going on, but is not, he's not domineering, right? And the other members of the crew kind of go at him because that he's not in charge, but he seems to have some kind of like authority, or at least feels he has some kind of authority within the crew as he is telling Rox to calm down. Stussy definitely is kind of attached to Whitebeard, so it's becoming more and more believable that Edward Weevil really is Whitebeard's son, because we know that Stussy ends up becoming Miss Bakken, Edward Weevil's mother. So we know that that's like a thing that could happen. Gloriosa, former Empress of Amazon Lily, is a member of the Rocks Pirates. That was crazy to learn about. We also we get Captain John. We haven't seen him, and a couple other people that we haven't seen. And I think this is the first time in the manga, in the canon material, that we see a young Big Mom. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, but I think this is the very first time that we've seen a younger version of Big Mom, and what Big Mom looked like before, she got old, and she obviously looks much different now. So I thought that was interesting just for that. I love the interactions between her and Kaido, and that was really cool. And Shiki, I think this is Shiki's first canon appearance in the manga as well. Obviously, he was a movie villain. We've known about Shiki for a long time, but haven't really encountered him in a lively way like this. And so that was really cool. But of course, this flashback isn't focused on the larger God Valley incident. It's focused on Kuma and his newfound friends Ivankov and Ginny, right? And so they have to escape this island, and Ivankov makes it clear the only way they're going to escape this island is they have to get the pawpaw fruit, and that will help them all get out of this situation. So him and Kuma end up finding the devil fruits, and Kuma does eat the pawpaw fruit and ends up saving a lot of them. And of course, following that, we cut from God Valley. One thing I want to mention before we do that is he actually meets Saint Saturn later. And has an interesting conversation with him where he says, you're someone important. Why are you important? Why were you born important and I was born a slave? This idea that has kind of run throughout One Piece and certainly throughout Kuma's story of why some people subjugate others has been a running theme throughout this story, and it continues to run here, and I thought it was a very interesting question. I also love when they do escape, that Kuma and Ginny end up living in that church, and that Kuma is so kind towards everyone, and uses his power to heal them, and is kind. Ivankov goes off, he leaves them, and of course he does, because we see him later, but Kuma and Ginny are just living their life happily in this village. Unfortunately, the flashback is still young, and Ginny is not a character we know of. So, I don't have super high hopes for Ginny, and high hopes for this flashback kind of emotionally to stay at the high point that it is. But this was a really great chapter. I mean, it was great in getting to see things that we wanted to see, as well as just further showing us Kuma's character, and probably, my guess is, how he came to become the king of the Sorbet Kingdom. So, those are my thoughts on One Piece. It was a great chapter this week. Next up is Kagurabachi, Chapter 7. Another great chapter this week. So, we pick up with Chihiro and Char kind of, they're being cornered by other sorcerers, right? But they're saved by this guy, Asumi, who we meet later, who's a member of this group of, this like government licensed group of sorcerers who are hunting, these, who are trying to protect the nation. Their goal is to protect the nation and take out any dangerous threats to it. And so he is incredibly strong. Without using sorcery at all, he took out these sorcerers like they were nothing. And so he is definitely no pushover for sure, and a really cool character. I mean, you guys know I love the choreography in this manga. I really think that it's really drawn very well. And so this Azumi's fight was no different. It was awesome. But mainly this chapter is we get information about the world of Kagurabachi. We got info on this unit that protects the nation. We have he kind of gives a pass to Chihiro because he should probably confiscate Chihiro's curse, his weapon that's imbued with sorcery, but he doesn't. And he tells Chihiro and Mr. Shiba that there's an auction going on, and that this guy named Sojo has put up one of the 6 cursed blades that Chihiro is after up for auction here. And then we see that guy, Sojo, who we saw a couple chapters ago. We see him talking to someone who appears to be higher up than he is on the food chain. So I think Sojo is our first main villain. I think we're going to be dealing with him a lot as we go forward in this manga. But I really like this chapter. I thought it was a very cool chapter. I thought the fight with Asumi was really cool. I think Asumi in general is really cool. And I look forward to what happens after this. It seems like Mr. Shiba's pretty opposed to joining this government organization, and honestly, I hope that they don't. I hope they don't join the government organization and they keep going the way that they're going. I think that is the most interesting for them. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Kagurabachi this week. Next up, we've got Sakamoto Days, chapter 141 came out this week, and again, a banger chapter this week. This is an amazing chapter. What a great way to start this new kind of arc that we're going to go in with the Assassin Exhibition. It was an awesome way to start. First of all, we're reintroduced to a character called Kaji, who we saw in the JCC admission exam portion of this story, and is back now. He's got incredible hearing, and they're using that to help them try and find the bomb. So I like that he was back, especially because he ended up being the catalyst this chapter for us to find out that those 2 other members, he saw that guy in the mask that he recognized from the exam. And this ends up kind of reflecting on them. Mafuyu is the guy in the mask, and he ends up taking him out, and we see the girl and him, who seem to be totally on board with Slur's plan now. We see them take out Kaji and continue with this plan. So they are the ingredients for this plan, and of course they are. They're the people that the Order or Sakamoto's group does not know. They don't know that they are part of this. They think they're being held hostage by Slur. And so, of course, they would be able to infiltrate easier. I think that's really, really cool. We also might be getting more information about who X is himself, what's going on with his personality thing. It seems like Wu-Tang has information about that for Sakamoto, and they were on the phone doing that. All in all, an incredible chapter. A lot of anticipation build up in this chapter. And I'm looking forward to next week when we see kind of what comes of this and how this plot continues. I also like the stuff with the girl member of the Order, and I forget her name now, but where she like takes that teddy bear out and the little girl's like, I don't want it. I thought that was kind of funny. we see all three of our teams here. We didn't get a whole lot from the order this week, but I'm sure they will be popping up more and more as these chapters go on, Nagumo specifically. So yeah, I'm really excited for this arc coming up and what that's going to mean and the fights that are going to happen here. And yeah, it's really awesome. I mean, Mafuyu got so much stronger that he was able to take Kaji out in one hit, and so it's definitely incredible. I'm just excited. I'm just excited as a Sakamoto Days fan to be able to be here while this is happening. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Sakamoto Days this week. And that will bring us to chapter 123 of Blue Box. Another great Blue Box chapter. You guys know I'm a big fan of this series. I don't need to tell you that I really like Blue Box. I really love it. But this chapter was great. It was another chapter that seemed to focus more on the sports side of this story, and that's great. I love that side. I'm a big sports manga fan in general, and so I definitely like this kind of arc that we're in here. But this chapter focuses a lot on Haruto. We get to learn a lot more about him, his motivations for coming to Amy, and all of that comes along with that. His relationship with his brother, obviously kind of the main rival of this series. So we get to learn all of that stuff in this chapter and see that he came to Amy because he heard that someone had beaten his brother Shuji in a practice match, and he said, I want to go train with that guy and so that I can be an opponent to Shuji. And of course, this is where he finds himself playing that very guy who is Taiki, our main character. And so this match was really cool. I think that, this allowed them both to show what they're good at, right? Haruto is a very skilled player. He's got these trick shots. He's got a lot of technical skill, and Taiki is just the fundamentals king. I mean, he just is able to hit the fundamentals, no problem, and ends up being a better player because of that. And so after he beats Haruto, Haruto he realizes that Taiki is the guy who beat his older brother. And so this is the guy who is his goal. And so he kind of readjusts himself in that way, calling Taiki senpai and everything, to continue down that road. I love that. I thought this was a great way for Taiki to show Haruto that he is his upperclassman, that he is very talented. And this is, for Taiki, who is this very humble guy, this was a great way to show that humility one more time. So yeah, I really liked it. It was a great Blue Box chapter, and that's all I got to say about it. And that will bring us to Undead Unluck, chapter 181, came out this week, and oh my word, this is another banger chapter this week. This is incredible. Undead Unluck is just getting hyper and hyper as the weeks go by. I love this series. Anyway, so this week, right, we get the follow-up to last week where we saw Andy come back, right? He finally came back. And so we get the follow-up to that where Andy is fighting Sick and takes Sick down in a matter of seconds. I mean, he's able to use the other abilities he knows of the other negators there to take Sick down and shove him down super far into the ground. Then, in the last couple seconds, him and Fuko high five and they get shot up into the air, and everybody's like, that's not enough contact for this to be like a bad thing. They don't have, like, it won't work. And then we see just how much these two still, or at least Fuko, still deeply cares about Andy. When a comet strikes through him. This is incredible. And Fuko seems to think she knows where Andy has been trapped. And there's this reverse, this underside of the round table where it looks like a bunch of Uma are sitting. And maybe this is where Andy has been trapped, and this is why he can't come out. And so obviously Fuko is down there, appears to be there. So that's super interesting. And so hopefully we're going to get Andy back for good soon. I hope this isn't just, I hope that soon Andy comes back. I don't even come back next week or even the week after, but I just hope that Andy comes back soon, because seeing Andy these past two chapters really just reminded me of how much I love Andy and how much this duo together, now that I think Fuko has been fleshed out so much on her own, really will come together in such a great and strong way. So I'm very excited for the future of Undead Unluck. This was an amazing chapter. I just can't wait. So that will bring us to Akane-banashi. Chapter 84 came out this week. Another great Akane-banashi chapter. You guys know I love this series. You know, this is one that I really, really, really like. You know, I'm starting to say this a lot in these episodes, and I think right now in the magazine, there are only a couple series running that I am just neutral to. Most of them I'm a big fan of. But anyway, that's an aside. Akane-banashi this week was very good. First of all, we see Karashi, Akane, and Akane preparing for the study event. Their goal is to sell out this venue. So there's like 50 seats in the venue if they pack it out, and their goal is to sell it out before the event, right? And to start, they only had 4 people show up to this event. And they kind of explain some of the issues with the traditional arts and, you know, how it can be hard to advertise for yourself if you're engaged in the traditional arts in a way that, you know, in the way that Akane or, you know, Karashi or any of them are. This Rakugo world is one without social media. It's one that is not as flashy as some other entertainment. And so it's harder to advertise for yourself and to advocate for yourself that way in this world. And so, I mean, that's what we see here in this chapter. But I love how Karashi and Akane take this. Karashi is discouraged, right? He's like, holy cow, we only got 5 people. And that was with the elder, the guy who is actually probably going to become up for Tsume. That's with him telling all of his friends about this, right? Only 4 people showed up. And so Karashi is discouraged, but Akane says this is something to build on. I love Akane's optimism. I love how she tackles the world as, you know, and goes at every, you know, continues to push past her limits. I think it's really cool. I just think it's really cool. I think Akane is a very cool character. I've liked her from the beginning, and I still like her. The other thing that we see this chapter is we get introduced to Taizen Arakawa, the last member of the Arakawa Arch 4. And oh boy, is his face severe looking. I just like, you know, I think that he's going to end up being more sympathetic of a character than we think he is, but he definitely doesn't appear to be a sympathetic character. But I'm very excited to see what happens after Chocho encounters him here. Chocho, who seems to be this like kind of crazy laid-back guy, what's going to happen when he encounters Taizen, and how are the two of them going to play off of each other? I guess we'll just have to wait and see, but it was a great Akane-banashi chapter, and I really liked it. And next we have Nue's Exorcist. Chapter 24 came out this week. And so this chapter, while not a very flashy chapter, except for maybe one panel, was a very informative one. We learned a lot about the world of Nue's Exorcist this week. And that's always important. Exposition is an important part of stories. And actually, it's a part of stories that I really do enjoy reading in this week-to-week style. I think if you can concentrate your exposition into a single chapter, kind of like Nue's Exorcist is trying to do, then you, as a weekly reader, I feel like I understand the world better. So I appreciate when they pack it all together like this. But big things that we learned a couple big things. First of all, we learned kind of what the captain's duties are. We also learned that most of the other places that are governed, that have a hyo sealed in them, are terrible places, and they're extremely harsh environments that are very, very hard to control, and that's why these other captains have to be as strong as they are. Nue's territory is not like that, because Nue is not you know, harsh like that. So we learned that. We also learned that all of the hyo have like true names, and if you use their true name, you can kill them. You can destroy them. And so Nue has given the captains and Gakuro her true name. And in doing that, we see this panel of Nue's true form, which is really cool. I mean, it's this giant beast. It looks in the face, it looks a little canine, but then it seems like it has feathers at other parts. It looks awesome. It's very spooky, very like monster-esque, so it was really cool to see. I thought that was really cool. But so with that kind of insurance, they let Gakuro become the captain for Nue's Hyo. He is responsible for guarding Nue, for overseeing this territory. And while I didn't think he would become the captain like this, I think it's fine. I think that for where we are in the series, it's okay. I don't expect Nue's Exorcist to be a series that runs for a long time. I think that if Nue's Exorcist hits the 50 to, 100 chapter mark, 50, 75, that kind of area, I think would be good for Nue's Exorcist. I don't know that you need much more than that, is what I'm saying. I think that this story is playing out in a very quick way. And so it's okay that Gakuro has become the captain. But, hey, I don't know. Maybe this goes on to be a much bigger success than we're thinking it will be now. And the scope of the story just seems smaller to me. That's kind of my point there. But that's really what I had to say about Nue's Exorcist this week. And that will bring us to our next chapter, which this week was Witch Watch, chapter 131. It was a good chapter, so we see the after effects of Nico using witch recovery on Morihito. And it is pretty severe. She is reverted to the age of a 5-year-old, unless we can get these butterflies back in her, right? One of the things I like is after this power has left her, the villain has no reason to stay here. So he goes away, presumably until she regains her abilities, and then I'm sure we'll see him again. But, of course, we've had a very intense arc. This arc has had a lot of battles, we've had a lot of action, and a lot of, intenseness, and so we need to go back and have some slice of life chapters. Witch Watch is primarily a slice of life manga, and so we need to go back to that calm pace for a little while as we anticipate further conflict, right? And so this was the big reset button. I don't know how many chapters Nico is going to stay as a child, but I think it's reasonable to assume several chapters. I think it's reasonable to assume that Nico will stay a child for quite some time, but I really didn't have a ton to say about it. That's pretty much it. And that brings us to Martial Master Asumi. This week, chapter 19 came out. Oh, man, this is another manga that I'm beginning to really, really love. I think this is an incredible manga. And what a great, what a great sports manga to have running in Weekly Shonen Jump right now. I mean, it's really, really good. I love it. If you're not caught up, obviously you probably aren't listening to this part because you looked at the time cards. But if I just so happen to have you, this is great. I love this series. Definitely, it's only 19 chapters. Read those chapters, get caught up, and get in the game here. I love this series. So the big things I want to mention today is this difference in drive between Nito and Taiga is playing itself out again in this chapter in a big way. Taiga is unrelenting. He will not lose. Kazlo, I like. One of the things I like about this is he kind of explains that it might be good for Nito to lose this match. He could easily get another amateur match and win that, and then he would be eligible to go pro. And so it's not like this is a huge setback for Nito. And I actually even said that I think it's possible he loses this match. And even after this chapter, I think it is still possible that he is going to lose this match. I don't think it's guaranteed by any means, but I think it would be reasonable to guess that. But at the end of what I really want to talk about is the end of this match. At the end of this match, where Taiga seems to have him on the ropes, Taiga has got him, right? We see him relax and use a strike extremely well. I love that his grandpa said something right before that happened, that Nito will be fine. And it seems like his whole personality has changed here at the end. I'm really wondering what this means. What is going on with Nito? Why is he like this? What's happening? What is the thing that's going on? But either way, no matter what, it was very cool. I can't wait for next week. I can't wait to see what changes about him, what is going on, maybe get an explanation for what's happening. But yeah, it was a really good Martial Master Asumi chapter. So yeah, I really loved it. So that will bring us to the next chapter, which is Cipher Academy, chapter 46. So we are back in the metaverse of the digital Cipher Academy, right? We're still there. We're still going through. But we've taken a break from following Arahozaka and crew, and we have focused in on an intruder that the AI program has gone to eliminate. And that intruder, of course, is anonymity. Of course it's anonymity requested. Anonymity is one of my favorite characters actually in this series. I like her. I like how villainous she can be at times, but obviously not intimidating at all. I think that's really interesting. So I'm a fan of anonymity requested. And I'm also a fan of the other person that comes to save her, who has been kind of a backdoor participant in this, Yozakura. I loved Yozakura during the grade-wide leading private competition that they had. I thought that she was really cool in that. And so seeing these two paired together going through the Digital Cipher Academy, now that they're allowed to be these kind of third wheels, that's so cool. I love that, and I can't wait to see how that goes and interacts. On the whole, you guys know, if you've listened to me before, I'm not that into Cipher Academy. It's not one of my favorite series running in the magazine right now, but on the whole, this arc is really cool, and I'm really getting into it and able to follow it more, especially since I've been making these podcasts. I've been trying to pay more attention and keep up with the series a little more, but yeah, I really liked it this week. And that will bring us to Icehead Gill. Chapter 18 came out this week. And actually, you guys know, if you've listened to the podcast, I'm not that big a fan of Icehead Gill anymore. When it first came out, I had high hopes for it. In fact, I think I had higher hopes for it even than I did Martial Master Asumi, which came out at the same time. But obviously, my thoughts on those have shifted. But I thought this was a really good Icehead Gill chapter. I really, really did. I think that exploring Gill's relationship to his father Dreki, how it was before he was turned into a lich, is really important, I think, for the story, and helps explain Gill's facial expressions last chapter, and even his empathy this chapter, right? I love that moment where the Lich Dreki is going on and on about how the strong survive and they ought to thrive, and Gill is like, you sound so stupid. I just love that. Gill is like, you would never say that before. You're not the same guy. And Gill's right, he's not the same guy, right? We know that. But at the same time, it's incredible. I mean, it was a good thing to do. I think it was a great piece of dialogue and a great thing to do. Honestly, like I said, I made this guess either last week or the week before. I think Icehead Gill is going to end in the next round of cuts. I don't think it's going to make it past the next round of series ending. And so I think that this was something good to add in at the end. Something that maybe the author had wanted to put in earlier and now has that opportunity to put this in by the end. You know what it kind of reminds me of? If you guys remember a series called Hunter's Guild Red Hood, that series was another one that seemed to have a lot of philosophy behind it and a lot of ideas behind it, but never got the chance to display them. And I'm kind of worried that Icehead Gill might be along those lines too. But either way, Icehead Gill this week was really cool. We end the chapter with Dreki gonna probably take the king out. So we'll see what happens. Varthur got hit this chapter. I liked Varthur. I liked his little squirrel companion. It was funny. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Icehead Gill. A good chapter in what is otherwise not my favorite manga. So next up, we have Mission Yozakura Family. This week, chapter 200 was released. I was just talking in the comments last week about how it's crazy that Mission Yozakura Family has made it to 200 chapters. There were several times along our journey with this series that I didn't think it was going to continue. I thought it was going to come to an end or be canceled, even worse, So it's amazing to me that we find ourselves in this position of being at the finish line, right? Or not the finish line, but being at 200 chapters and looking back at all that time that we've spent with this series. It's just kind of, it's cool. It's cool that it's at 200 chapters. And this was a great chapter to be chapter 200, right? We get to see what true spring blooming is, right? We saw it last chapter. It was a very cool look, but we get to see what it really is, right? This is explained as mastering both sides of your blooming ability. So Taio's blooming ability is hardening. It makes his body harder. That's the whole thing. But with true spring blooming, Taio has mastered not just hardening, but softening. So he has the perfect response to every attack that's thrown at him. I think this is a genius idea. I'm interested to see if the other siblings also have mastered their abilities in this way. It doesn't seem like they have, based on their reaction to Taio, but if they have, I'm interested to see what that means for them and what their specific abilities do in this case. But like I said, I don't think they have to. I don't think like that's. I don't think they have. But if they have, I would be interesting to see what this means for them. Obviously, Taio's is very cool and pretty simple, and it's a pretty simple ability. And his fight was incredible. I mean, he takes out Ryu like nothing. One of the things I thought was interesting is pretty much just the confirmed nature of Ryu's feelings for Takemi being romantic, right? We just didn't see that. And one of the things I think is interesting is they weren't a couple. It's not really confirmed how Takemi felt about Ryu, but obviously they were good friends. But it's just kind of an interesting, thought. It's an interesting way of depicting this kind of relationship that these two have, and obviously the massive amount of guilt that Ryu feels. I love Taio's explanation of like how he sees the same look that Mitsumi shows to their kids in Ryu towards Katana, and so of course, he knows that Ryu cares about him. That was really good. I really like that. And then the end where Ryu like breaks down and cries, it was awesome. I mean, it was an awesome Mission Yozakura family chapter. It was a great chapter 200 to be. It's just really good. I really like this series. I hope it goes on for longer. I hope it continues to push forward and reach new heights. But yeah, I really liked it this week. So next we have the Elusive Samurai, chapter 131 came out this week. And we have a little downtime, right, in between the battles that we've been fighting recently. We have a little bit of downtime with Tokiyuki and Kojiro and all the gang, right? They're back in Kamakura. They see Masamune, and Kojiro gets a new sword, and he gets a really cool sword. And I like the sword, but I really don't have a ton to say about it other than I like it. I think parts of this chapter were funny. I think just how tortured Masamune is kind of weird. I don't know. I just like, it's just sad. He's a sad guy to me. Yeah, but he's a nutcase for sure, but he's just kind of, it's strange. I don't know. But Kojiro's new sword's really cool. I think that, this competition that they're about to get involved in is going to be probably in the next couple chapters as we wind down from this big battle with Ienaga. Obviously, some huge chapters that happened these past couple weeks. So as we wind down from that, we're going to have this little competition. So I think it's good. It was a good chapter. I liked it. But yeah, that's really all I had to say about the Elusive Samurai this week. And that will bring us to the Ichinose family's Deadly Sins, chapter 47 was released this week. A good chapter, but I just, honestly, I'm getting a little confused. You guys know I'm a fan of the Ichinose family's Deadly Sins. I think it's a confusing manga, but one that I have enjoyed so far. I like the twists and turns. I think, honestly, when I think about manga that I might want to collect if they get released in English, I don't know that this is one of them. I think that this manga really is made specifically for a week-to-week audience. And in the twists and turns that it has so frequently. Again, we end up in the hospital room with Tsubasa waking up, and so I just don't know anymore, right? I'm so confused. It seemed like we came to a head, right? The grandpa had done all this work on this dream to try and create this dream, and Kakeru, the father, had implemented it. He had fed the family this. But now, what's happening now? I really thought we were getting close to the end of this manga as a series, but we get further and further away from it, the more the more this series goes on. So I really thought we were going to end pretty soon, but I don't know anymore. I have no idea what's going to happen anymore, but it was a good chapter. Just, I'm getting, I don't know. I was a little more frustrated than I have been with the cyclical nature of this series, I guess. And that brings us to our final chapter for this week, and that is 2 on Ice, Chapter 6. Another great chapter. Again, I have to mention the art. The art in this manga is really good. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I even think it's funny how they can make like the kind of like cartoonish versions of their main characters. I think that's pretty funny too. So I like a lot about the artwork of 2 on Ice, but I also think it's a great sports manga for the magazine. Again, I'm a fan of the genre of sports manga, a genre that has been lacking in Weekly Shonen Jump for a while, but now we have 2 really good ones. Martial Master Asumi, a much more, physical competition-oriented one, and 2 on Ice, another great sports manga. So I really like both of them, but this week, we focused on that training aspect. We learned something about figure skating, something I never knew about ice skating, which is if you find a balance point on your skate, it will allow you to glide nearly indefinitely. And, of course, professional figure skaters know this. Of course, this is something that is known to them, but it's something that Hayuma is learning in this chapter, and he's doing these basic drills, and he's just loving doing these basic drills. One of the things I love about that is, of course he loves this. He's never had the opportunity to simply train in figure skating to get better and better. So, of course, when he's finally given that opportunity, he eats it up. It's so cool to him. He loves doing it. And so we see a lot of that training in this chapter. And, of course, the chapter then ends with this big declaration. He wants to be judged similarly to Kisara because he wants to know, how far off am I from her? How much further ahead is she? And so to do that, they both have to enter the senior division of this Kirishima competition. And so, I really think it's good. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm looking forward to the future of 2 on Ice, but it was a really good chapter this week. Okay, guys, that brings us to the end of another Shonen Express podcast. As always, thanks guys so much for listening. But before we go, I have to give you my top 3 manga in the magazine this week. My number 3 this week went to Undead Unluck. I love the stuff. I love the returning character. I love the bond that they have, and that being displayed this week was awesome. Number 2 this week was Mission Yozakura Family. The new ability was really cool, and the emotion behind this chapter, I think, earns it this spot in my top 3. And my number 1 chapter this week, you guys might not be that surprised, goes to One Piece. I think the flashback we're currently in is very cool. The philosophical conversation that happens in this chapter was very thought-provoking, and I loved seeing the past legends and what's going on with them. And just this whole flashback has been really cool. So One Piece was my number 1 this week. Guys, thanks so much for watching or listening, however you're interacting with this podcast. I love that there is an audience here and you guys want to keep listening and watching. If you have anything to say, leave it in the comment section of this YouTube video if you're watching YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcast, definitely also in the comments of that, leave your comments. I'd love to be able to, know what you guys think and interact with you guys there. So yeah, it's always fun when I get to interact with you guys in the podcast. I love talking about these stories, so I would love to talk about them more with you. But yeah, like, subscribe, rate the podcast. However you're watching this, show me some love there. I'm going to be doing these podcasts, probably indefinitely, as long as Weekly Shonen Jump is released to us in English. I'll try to keep doing these podcasts for us. And be on the lookout, because pretty soon, this year in Weekly Shonen Jump is going to end, and so I'm going to do a recap video like I did way back, a couple years ago. So I hope to do another video like that, so I'm excited to get into that. But, guys, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, this is Shonen Express, signing off.